currently I'm back in Australia and I've got one day before I head to Adelaide with a band called Thornhill for a one-off festival date. We don't have any rehearsal or anything before this, so I'm going to open up an old recording of the band and make sure that my session sounds good and that we're in the best possible shape that we can be for that show. So the song I'm going to work through today is Casanova by Thornhill. This one's got a lot of everything: guitars, bass and drums, electronics, solos. It starts off with electronics, which sounds like this. And then just a single guitar, it sounds like this. And then in a moment, the whole song will kick in. I'll let you hear that first. I've got the vocals muted at the moment, just want to give you context of the band, and then I'm going to walk through a couple of things. So I might take you through this verse bit first. The verse is predominantly drum kit, tracks, and bass. So it's really good to hear the bass and the kit lock in, so I'm just going to play that. So this is the drum kit on its own. First drums, I'm just going to give you just the overheads. So this is a left and a right underhead, spot mic'd with SE S8s. And there's a China mic as well. As you can hear, it gives a pretty good stereo spread. Bring the kick. A lot of snare bleed through the overheads, that helps create more of the drum kit image, but let's bring in the snare. A lot of reverb on the snare. Just a little trick I like is adding a lot of body to reverb. Tends to beef up the snare a little bit if you've got these higher pitch kind of snares. I'm just going to loop these verse drums for a moment so you can hear the overall image of the kit. We've got SE8s under mic'd for left crash, right crash, an AT450 for hi-hats, and an SE7 for the China mic. It sounds like this. Cool. I might take you through a couple of the things that I'm doing. Got a kick in and a kick out. The kick in is a Sennheiser 901, kick out's a D6. I'm gonna mute a few things here so you can just hear that kick in action. Someone asked about grouping and how I lay things out, but on a M32 I try and keep it pretty simple. The only things that's really go into groups is the kick and the snare and the vocal. This is just the kick in on its own. Kick out on its own, and then both of them together. Let's take off some of my EQ on kick in and kick out. So as you can hear, it sounds really boxy. So I'm just trying to emphasize the fundamental low end of the kick and give it a little bit more attack whilst getting rid of that junk that comes with the snare bleed you can hear in there and a few other things. So let's add it back in. This is a kick in EQ. Instantly a lot slappier and punchier. The kick out, not doing a great deal to that. There's a little bit of boost in the top end. More in the 60 Hertz region is where I'm giving that a boost. And then again, adding a little bit more on the group. For snare, I'm using an SE V7X for top and a SM57 for bottom. I really like the sound of those. This is the snare top. As you can hear, a lot of reverb going on. This is snare bottom. Both of those get sent equally to the reverb, but if I put them together, let's take off the EQ of the snare top. mute that drum reverb. So I'm doing a lot of heavy lifting with the snare EQ here. A lot of fundamental around 200, opening it up with the top end, just without the top end. Sounds a little closed off. Sounds much more open, you get a lot more hi-hat, but again, I don't mind that in the context of everything. At the snare bottom in, again, reinforcing the fundamental and the meat of the snare and the sizzle as well. That's snare bottom normally. That's it with the EQ that I've added. Put them both together, kick and snare. Again, don't mind this hi-hat bleed. If I add the hi-hats in, now you should start to get a bit more of the image of the hi-hat, and as you can tell, it's not really distracting in the middle of the channels. Let's put the overheads back in to give you a bit more image. Sounds cool. Overheads for this band, I'm looking for everything to be really tight. I don't need a lot of low end from the kit in my overhead, so I'm high passing that as far as it would go on this, probably up to 400, 500 hertz. Let's double check. 400 hertz on all of these, so my China, everything. And then I'm just looking to get rid of some nasty frequencies in the mids and the top end, depending on the crash that's being played and also the mic that we're using. Cool, let's add some bass in. Gonna solo that for a second. So the bass on its own is purely just one channel straight out of a Neural DSP Quad Cortex. Cage, who plays bass in the band, records and mixes. He mixed the dark pool, he's done a whole bunch of stuff with the band, so the bass tone that I get straight from him sounds good already, but I am still being pretty heavy-handed with how I want this to fit into the mix. So adding a fair bit of compression here. If I take that off, sounds great, that's fine. I'm just really pinning that down. And then I've got some EQ here as well. One of the main things we're doing is getting rid of this mid-range. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. In this mix, wasn't really feeling it, so I'm cutting that out. Set that reverb in. I got a lot of reverb on this. One of the main things I find with doing a live band as opposed to being in a recording studio is that you don't have room mics. So I'm trying to recreate that a little. And again, I really like emphasizing the fundamental of the snare in this, which helps create a bit more meat in my drums. Cool, let's look at guitars. So I've got stereo guitars in this band, but if you know, Thornhill only has one guitar player. So I have one that's coming directly from that guitar player, and then we have a pre-recorded live take. The live take was recorded as a one take, so it sounds as natural and as live as possible, played by the same guitar player, but you get little differences which help create that stereo spread and nice chunky guitars, which sound like this. So I'm just gonna loop this guitar take and I'll just bring in the live guitar for you to listen to. With EQ, I'm removing some low mids, some of the mid-range, and just some fizzly little stuff at the top. I'll take the EQ out and put the EQ back in. No EQ. And then with EQ. As you can hear, I'm really just taming all of the stuff that doesn't need to be there while making sure that the overall guitar tone still gets to cut through in the mix. So kit, bass, guitar. We'll add some tracks in and listen to that, but overall feeling really happy with how things are sounding. These are the tracks in the background right now. Just some affected vocals that we have in the background as well. This recording is from a show with Northlane earlier in the year. We were at Danforth Music Hall in Toronto, Canada, and this is what it all sounds like together. Let's put some vocals in.
1 second and I try to play. 2 seconds ain't enough, 'cause you're my prey. When I saw you there, hands up in the air.
It's very quiet in the verse.
Well, baby, I see your baby.
Cool, obviously I just walked through a few things very quickly there to give you an idea of what things sound like before and after. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, but I'm feeling really good with the mix and ready to take this to a festival.